but he invited my best friend Stanley. Jeremy Ross was the one and only person on my enemy list. Now, my dad understood stuff like enemies. He told me that when he was my age, he had enemies too. But he knew of a way to get rid of them. And so I asked him to tell me how. He said, "Tell you how? I'll show you how." And he pulled out a really old recipe book off the kitchen shelf. And inside was a torn up, faded piece of paper. "Enemy pie," he said, satisfied. "This is the fastest known way to get rid of enemies." The recipe was so secret he wouldn't even tell me. What kind of disgusting things are in enemy pie? I tried to imagine how horrible it must smell, and worse yet, what it would look and taste like. Maybe this would be a great summer after all. All afternoon, Dad was chopping and stirring and blending ingredients for enemy pie, but soon I smelled something really, really good coming from our kitchen. "Dad, what's wrong? Enemy pie shouldn't look and smell this good." But Dad was smart. I could tell he'd made enemy pie before, and he smiled and he said to me, "If enemy pie smelled bad, how would your enemy eat it?" Right. I was catching on. Still, I wasn't sure how this enemy pie worked. So while the pie cooled, my dad quietly told me what else I had to do. "There's one part of enemy pie that I can't do. In order for it to work, you need to spend a day with your enemy. Even worse, you have to be nice to him. It's not easy, but that's the only way enemy pie will work." Are you sure you want to go through this? Of course I was. I rode my bike to Jeremy's house and knocked on the door. Jeremy seemed surprised when he opened it, and I asked him, "Can you play?" He asked his mom and came back with his shoes in hand. We rode our bikes for a while, and then we played on Jeremy's trampoline. Then we made water balloons and threw them at the neighbor girls. We missed. Jeremy's mom made us lunch, and after that, we went to my house. It was strange. I was kind of having fun with my enemy. He almost seemed nice. And then Jeremy saw my treehouse. I knew he was going to ask me to go inside, but enemies aren't allowed in my treehouse. That being said, he wasn't being a very good enemy. We played games in my treehouse until my dad called us to dinner. And after dinner, Dad brought out the pie. I watched nervously as he dished up 3 thick slices. It was at this point that I panicked. I didn't want Jeremy to eat enemy pie. He was my friend. "Jeremy, don't eat it! It's a bad pie! I think it's poisonous or something." Jeremy's fork stopped before it reached his mouth, and he looked at me kind of funny. I felt relieved. I'd saved his life. I was a hero. If it's so bad, then why has your dad already eaten half of his?" "Good stuff," Dad said around a mouthful. And that's when I discovered that enemy pie was delicious. I still don't know how to make enemy pie. I don't know if I'll ever get an answer because I just lost my best enemy. Can you help me remember that loving the hell out of the world creates space for miracles, like enemies who become friends? My prayer is that we find our ways out of the midst of our anger and our sadness and move into building common humanity with others in the midst of making changes in ourselves and our world that are so, so desperately needed. Here ends our story for all ages.
Since our chaplain today is also our musician, I am standing in for him during our candle lighting ritual. This is a time we hold our community's sorrows, joys, and thanksgivings. We light a candle today for Tom McDonald and family, as Tom's father, Bud, recently passed. When someone from our community moves away, there is all the feels: sorrow, joy, and gratitude. great sadness, joy for them in the new life chapter, and most of all, much gratitude for the time we have enjoyed together and the indelible mark they have made on this community. Today, we light candles in honor of these dear ones who have moved or are in the process. Deborah Graham, Eric Paul and Jillian Baez, Lynn Robertson Hotz, Karen and Andy D'Amato, Keith Neer, and Leslie Culmer Neer. We now invite you to come forward and light a candle for the joys, sorrows, and thanksgivings in your life. Every week, we have a time in our service called the offering. And as with any ritual, we can easily lose the meaning of it. It can become a simple act of taking out our wallet and pulling out a bill and placing it in the plate. I offer us this morning an opportunity to disrupt that. Take a deep breath and release it with gratitude for the fact that you can do so. Close your eyes or rest your gaze and allow your mind to focus on other things you are grateful for. Those you love, those who love you. The last beautiful thing you saw or heard or felt. The smell of a baby's head. Memories which bring joy. Take another deep breath and release it with gratitude, and return your focus to the room. Today, as we perform this ritual, do so with that gratitude for all you have and for those with whom you share this journey.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries,
Imagine. Thank you, Dennis. Good morning, Beacon. Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Good? Feeling pretty relaxed? Yeah. Not me. Like Emily alluded to, the process of preparing and delivering a sermon is a little nerve-wracking. And this somehow often happens to me. A couple months ago, Reverend Robin asked Missy and I to lead this service. And I was like, yeah, fine, easy. A couple weeks ago, Missy came up with this great idea, and she says, I'll do everything. You just do the service. And I said, fine, easy, I got this. Shortly after, I'm looking at a blank computer screen, and I feel the nervousness and the anxiety building up. So I'm getting really worried. I'm like, I have no training for this. I have no background, I have no experience. I probably will say the wrong thing and offend people. So in my anxiety, I went to talk to Reverend Emily. And Reverend Emily said, you'll be fine. That didn't help. But she did help me. She let me in on a little secret that I didn't know about, but it looks like every minister knows about. It seems to be a very little known fundamental right. And it's called freedom of the pulpit. And Emily said, you got it. So I'm hereby exercising my fundamental right of freedom of the pulpit. And I apologize for any unprepared or offending remarks. Let's take a look at the news today or this week. Shout it out. What's in the news? I see people shaking their head. Global warming. Hunger. Ukraine. January 6th. Gun violence. Abortion. Did you guys read this? So, is it good or bad? It's mostly bad, no? But even more so than it being bad, there seems to be a word that picks up in almost any of these topics. And the word is sort of becoming a key word. It's called the word versus. Seems to be mentioned all the time. Roe versus Wade. Climate advocates versus climate deniers. Red states versus blue states. Life versus choice. Since when did these two things become opposites? Black lives versus blue lives. Since when did those two things become opposites? Really? It seems like on every topic that pops up in the news, we, as a community, as a society, as a country, we immediately split into two camps. Let's call them left and right, whatever you want to call them. And if we're not really sure what position we should take on any of these new topics, there seems to be a large number of cheerleaders in the newspaper, social media, TV, that will immediately tell us what position we should be taking. And it looks like the two sides, the polarization, almost radicalization, is getting worse. Feels like each side lives in its own echo chamber, whether it's through friends, whether it's through news, TV, newspapers, online, social media, maybe even congregations, if I can say so. Are we an echo chamber? Might we be? What do we do with many of these topics in the news? We talk about all of them. What do? We protest. We protest. We get involved. We think of ourselves as social action warriors. We take positions. We metaphorically fight. You know? We hang banners. We join rallies. You know? We chant. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. And we get angry. I get angry. We get angry. We get angry. I mean, now what happens with people who have opposite views? They get angry too. They sort of do the same thing. And it's getting worse. A recent study by the Cook Political Report estimates that a record number of 353 out of our 435 congressional races this year are undisputed, meaning that the race is decided in the primary, which means that typical, the more radical candidate will win. Only 34 races, less than 10%, are considered toss-ups. And it's even worse than that. There are actors, companies that benefit, that make profit and money from further dividing us. Unfortunately, we learned this from the Facebook whistleblower, Francis Haugen, who had the courage to come out, speak to Congress, and confirm what many of us suspected, that Facebook has an AI algorithm, an artificial intelligence capability to stoke anger on Facebook, to manipulate your feed of stories with things that are proven to make you anger. Because research has shown the angrier you are, the more time you spend online and the more money Facebook makes. That is the reality we live in us today. And it gets worse. Some of you shouted it out. January 6th, a violent mob attacks our house of democracy and people die. How much worse can it get? Well, maybe there's another way to look at it. Maybe we should listen to Harry Belafonte when he says turn the world around. And please, work with me. Let's try to look at things the other way around. Is it possible, and I truly believe, to think of January 6th not as the worst day in our democracy, but as the best day? Now, why would you say that? What is a democracy? Say it's a constitution, it's a piece of paper, it's an election, sure. But democracy ultimately lives in the hearts and the minds of all the people of a country. Now, how do you know how strong a democracy is? How do you know how strong anything is? Unless you try to break it. Imagine a democracy test for any democracy in the world where the most powerful person in that country, president, prime minister, whoever has all the power, actively tries to use their power, their influence, their henchmen to subvert an election that they, in their heart of heart, truly believe they won. How many democracies would survive this test? We don't know. But we did. We did survive this test. And a new president was sworn in shortly after. And that was only because of the hearts of minds of people throughout the country, administrators, election officials, elected people, including our vice president at the time, who I usually viscerally disagree with on every possible topic, each of them doing the right thing. And we survived. To me, I find that amazing. It makes me proud to be a citizen of this country. So, work with me. Let's try to turn the world around. Let's try to look at things a little differently. And is it possible that we, as a congregation, are somehow part of the problem? Do we have our own echo chamber? We like to believe of ourselves as being radically inclusive. Imagine one day, before service, we're in the lobby gathering, and a large group of MAGA-wearing people would join. What would we do? Would we be radically inclusive and welcoming, or would we call the police? It's not so clear. I've asked myself that question. It's not so easy. It's not so easy. So, could we also be part of a solution? Think about all the things we do as a congregation. I've had the pleasure of participating in something we organize called Dialogue Circles, where we organize deliberately uncomfortable, painful, difficult conversations about race in this country. I find it an unbelievably hard, challenging, and eye-opening experience. We do other things. One of our own members, Diana Kaiser, a couple years ago, through an organization called Better Angels and an organization Make America Relate Again, went on the radio to talk to her own sister, who was a staunch supporter of our former president, to talk about how politics divides their family and how they both struggled very publicly about finding common ground. Can we do that? Can we make some enemy pie? Well, there is a way of doing this, and I recently discovered this book, which I started to read but haven't had a chance to finish, called Crucial Conversations, and that's why I named this service Crucial Conversations. Because this book is based on many years of research, written by 5 different authors and scholars in the field, and give you a number of tools to create safe places to have uncomfortable conversations and to make enemy pie. And really look for when conversations do not become safe, because emotions take over, language becomes violent, or people become silent. So, what can each of us do right now? We can start examining ourselves. We can look not at our regular diet, but at our mental diet. Let's look at our digital diet. Let's look at our online diet. Are we spending maybe too much time in an echo chamber? Are we indulging too much in anger? Or can we find a willingness to make enemy pie and have crucial conversations? We can start in our own family, where we often have things we disagree on, or topics we don't want to talk about. Can we have the courage to do this, whether it's at home or whether it's at work? We all have that one colleague we just don't get along with. So I figured if I was going to be talking about this, I better do it. So about a week ago, I posted a message on Facebook in the Summit community group, and I said, my name is Wim. I'm typical liberal-leaning, and I almost always vote Democrat. And I would like to meet and have a conversation with some staunch supporters of our former president. And sure enough, people responded. I was hoping no, they would respond. And I had 2 crucial conversations with staunch supporters. We sat down and had coffee right here in town. People who live in town, have their own families, and were very eager to share their views. And it was hard. It was exhausting. I don't think anybody changed their mind on any topic. But I still take some solace and find it amazing that we were able to have a conversation with mutual respect. To just see the other side, understand the other side. Don't have to agree, and turn the world around. So the book title has the word crucial in it. Now, crucial in English means decisive or critical, especially around the success and failure of something. Now, if you look at the etymology of the word crucial, it comes from the Latin crux, which means cross. Now, when I hear cross, I think of Jesus. I grew up as a Catholic, and part of our roots of our congregation and our beliefs is the humanity of Jesus, less so the divinity. Now, if we think about Jesus, and I looked for many Jesus stories, not a lot of crucial conversations. Jesus was more maybe the rabble-rouser, maybe the extremist, maybe the person who was anger, and who went to the temple, turned over the tables of the money makers, one of my favorite stories. I always wanted to do that. But there is still an amazing moment when Jesus is actually on the cross. And while he's not quite having a crucial conversation, he still sees the humanity of the Roman soldiers who are about to kill him and prays for them. And maybe we can get some inspiration and some courage from that, because I cannot imagine anything being harder. So, we do need to heal. There are tools for healing, like this book. I remember one of the tools for healing that Reverend Emily talked about 2 weeks ago in her sermon, if you remember, where she talked about South Africa and the reconciliation campaigns, including some of the death squads after the apartheid regime ended. People were able to do these things and seek forgiveness. So, we really do not want things to get worse before they get better. They might, but we really don't want that. So where do we go from here? Are we going to solve this right here? No. Are we going to solve this right now? No. Should we, as a congregation, and as UUs, continue our fights, continue our protest, continue being social justice warriors? Absolutely. We should probably do more. But should we also balance our hearts and minds, turn the world around, and try to have almost a paradox of emotions in our heart, where on one hand it is anger, and we do feel like making a fist. But on the other hand, there is a notion of compassion. There is a notion of humanity. And there is a notion of reaching out a hand. I will do my best to keep that paradox of emotions in my heart and mind. And I would like to invite all of you to do the same. Thank you.
Try to see it my way.
Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Little darling, the smiles returning to their faces. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Sun, 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 here it comes. 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 Little darling, I feel that ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been clear. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, I say it's alright. It's alright.